Here at Mossy Oak, one of our core philosophies is about time. We believe time will always be our most valuable asset, and one of our greatest blessings in life is the time we get to spend in nature. Now, it's not just our responsibility, it's our privilege to protect and nourish the wildlife and resources that make it all possible. A selfless commitment to give back more than you receive and leave things better for the future. That's what it means to be a gamekeeper. Join us each week as we focus on the wildlife we all love and explore the practices and the people who are making a difference in our quest to become a better gamekeeper. The Gamekeepers of Mossy Oak is presented by Tractor Supply Company for life out here and LS Tractor. Start blue, stay blue.
All right, everybody, here we are. Welcome to West Point, Mississippi, the Gamekeeper Studio. Well, let me go ahead and introduce. We have got Dr. Coulter Chipwood.
Not big game doc, right? And he's like flying around, catching antelopes and chasing wolves in Alaska.
Elk. And he's from North Georgia.
I mean, he's got the best. He's got it going on.
He really does.
Yeah, I like to think so.
And I think he's working some fishing in all that too, from what I understand.
That's right, yeah.
So you're with Oklahoma State University.
My expertise is in big game ecology. So I do a lot of work on game species, especially things like white-tailed deer, wild turkey, elk, pronghorn.
Lanny, you've turkey hunted in Oklahoma.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of wildlife in Oklahoma.
Oklahoma's a great state to hunt in, no doubt. Duck hunting in Oklahoma.
Wild quail.
Yeah.
You guys.
Got some pretty big whitetails there, Mr. Trophy Hunter, too. Man.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I killed one in Oklahoma one time.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
They had to call you in.
With a muzzle loader.
It was so tough, nobody else could do it. They had to call in and hire guns.
A lot of
again.
fun.
I will say my big fun fact, if you could do it all in one day, you could start in southeast Oklahoma and you could be in a swamp that looks like South Georgia looking at alligator. Beat tracks all day to the extreme northwestern tip of the panhandle. You're in mesa country with cholla cactus, elk, bighorn sheep, and pronghorn.
Man, I might have to take a vacation there.
Blending right into New Mexico and Colorado. So it is an amazing state from a diversity standpoint.
All right, guys. So look, Richie, our esteemed producer, has spent some. Well, we didn't need the horns for that, Richie.
He horned himself.
Yeah.
We can edit that out later.
We spent some time with Coulter in Oklahoma capturing some pronghorn antelope.
We're in the Oklahoma Panhandle working on our Oklahoma Pronghorn research project. It's our second year of adult capture funded by Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation. It's run jointly by a bunch of us at Oklahoma State University, some colleagues at East Central University, which is also in Oklahoma, and colleagues at Texas A&M Kingsville.
ODWC, the surveys that they do annually from the air or via hunters, were indicating a potential population decline, likely or suspected to be driven by poor productivity.
And basically, the state of Oklahoma is interested in trying to figure out what appears to be population decline in the pronghorn population here in the Panhandle.
Those three institutions combined, we put forth a proposal to help ODWC address questions basically in two big prongs. Population demography, which is a fancy phrase for how are things living and dying, and is the population growing or declining and at what rate? And then on the other prong, because we're putting collars out, we can look at all kinds of questions related to how they're selecting resources, how they move about the landscape, and how changing landscapes, potential barriers might affect how they move, which might feed back on things like mortality and survival.
So later our crews will be back out here in the spring to catch fawns and collar them to look for causes of mortality and survival rates.
I didn't realize that Oklahoma had a huntable population.
They stretch from kind of the desert Southwest all the way into central Canada. So Oklahoma is situated in a pretty unique spot because we're about as far south as they go, but we're also about as eastward as they go. That also makes our project a bit unique because we're dealing with a native species right on the edge of its range. Landscape changes, be it farming practices, energy extraction, renewables like wind energy development, all of those things are kind of all happening in the core of the pronghorn range, but also on the fringes. On the fringes, we're interested in, well, does that cause a contraction or does the population continue to do well? We also recognize that we're on the edge of the range, and what's happening in Oklahoma could affect the Texas panhandle, northeast New Mexico, southeast Colorado, southwest Kansas, because the pronghorn don't care about the boundaries, right? We do. So even though we catch all of our adults within Oklahoma lands, we've got relationships built with all these states because they're all really interested in the outcome of our project as well.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, be sure to stay connected with us on both Facebook and Instagram at Mossy Oak Gamekeepers. To learn even more, check out the Gamekeeper podcast library, and specifically this episode. Subscribe now and stay up to date and never miss an episode. And hey, by purchasing a Mossy Oak wild turkey stamp, you can directly support wildlife research, show your dedication to conservation, and contribute to ongoing projects. Visit mossyoak.com to learn more.
We were scheduled to be there for a few days, and the first day, it's whiteout.
As in snow?
Yes, as in snow.
Yeah,
And
Bo took short
we don't know what
sleeve
that
shirts.
is.
yeah, and
Oh, yeah, that's right. Owen went out there in his beachwear.
Yeah, Owen, that's right. Yeah.
Coulter, can you help visualize to these guys just to walk them through the process with the helicopters and what it takes? They're out there, netting pronghorns and then bringing, the data back to you guys.
They go to either grid searching basically from the air, or because we've got collars out now, we can send them to recent locations of herds. You talk about them being fast. They have to fly with them, and the pilot has to keep everything in line. He's got to stay flanked just right. He's got to see the county road coming up, watching for power lines. He's got to turn them into the property that we can actually capture on. Well, they're looking at maps in their helicopter that are provided by our ground crew. Every day, we're uploading essentially a map that shows shapefiles of permission. Turns them the way he wants. They try to use terrain as much as they can. If there's any uphill, to run them uphill, they try to get them going uphill because it slows them down a little bit. And again, that's a welfare issue, because imagine if you were running as fast as you could and somebody hovering above you in a helicopter shot a net over you. It's designed to make you trip and fall. We're trying to minimize the amount of injury that could happen from that capture event. And that's why I said these crews are amazing.
And then the capture kits that we send up includes a collar, syringe with a needle so they can draw blood. We take a DNA sample, put in ear tags. We take a fecal sample, and then they bring all that material back to us, and the crew here on the ground processes it, get data to the lab, back to the university.
And they know how to fit a collar. They know how to draw blood. They know how to take a tissue sample. All the things that we do, Richie alluded to that, they bring us those samples back. We always love it when they hand us an armful of gallon Ziplocs, because every one of those Ziplocs is now missing a collar. And then the grad students and the technicians, they go to work in the pickup truck. While the helicopter refuels, they get a snack break, they take off and go hunt again. Our crew starts processing all those samples.
Meanwhile, the pronghorn's released on site, so the whole process from netting to letting go is usually less than 5 minutes, and we stand here and wait, and they come back for more fuel and more kits, and then we move on to the next spot.
Do y'all have bucks and does?
We went heavy on the female side because of that population dynamics component. We had 100 collars the first year, and we put 20 on bucks and 80 on does. And that was because in order to get at the reproductive information, we wanted to be biased toward the females. We used the females in order to capture the fawns. Having more females collared gives us more chances to detect that a female has given birth and then be able to go in and capture one or both. They usually have twins. Twinning is quite common, with pronghorns. So whether we collar one of them or two of them, the more females we have collared, the more chances we have to put collars on the neonates.
The Gamekeepers of Mossy Oak is presented by Mossy Oak Brand Camo, Native Nurseries and Biologic, Mossy Oak's Gamekeeper Kennels, and Gamekeeper Butchery, Mossy Oak Companions, Mossy Oak Fishing, Mossy Oak Properties, LS Tractors, The Furminator, Spartan Cameras, Nosler, Loophole Optics, Moultrie Feeders, Duke Traps, Apex, Polaris, Sheffield Financial, Gamekeepers Magazine, and Gamekeepers Fieldwear. Also, Biologic BCP Deer Feed, available at Tractor Supply. Be sure to listen to both our podcasts, The Gamekeepers of Mossy Oak and Fistful of Dirt, brought to you by Mossy Oak Properties.
The GPS collars will send a notification if the collar has not moved for 4 hours. And so at 5:30 this morning, we got a notification for a mortality signal with this serial number, and then we received a few points showing rough location of the mortality. The whole point in cause-specific mortality is trying to get out here in a timely manner to properly investigate and assess what could have killed this pronghorn, and that helped address a few other research questions about how the population is doing. Then you kind of treat it like a murder mystery and do your best to make your judgments in the field and try to solve and figure out what possibly happened here. Most of our mortality has been caused by vehicle accidents and coyote predation for adults, but other potential predators, especially out here, could be things like bobcats, golden eagles, and mountain lions. What we try to do when we go through the mortality is kind of figure out the potential of either of those. Canids and felids have different feeding characteristics. So, you know, like coyotes are kind of grabbing, trying to pull down, and cats are better killers. So you look for more of like hemorrhaging around the neck, bite wounds, things like that, caching under vegetation as opposed to burying or dragging and tearing apart carcasses. Looking at things like fur, this fur right here was torn off with the flesh, and like felids, for instance, would pull and pluck hair, and it would almost look like somebody came and like cut it with scissors. And so you can kind of use that to identify at least what's scavenged. And another thing is how animals feed on the ribs. And these are kind of broken and snapped off. A felid would actually kind of gnaw these down at the end when they were done with it and sort of chew down these like finest processes. These are just snapped and broken off. This right here is actually fairly extreme bruising. Like, it doesn't look like much on the outside, and then once you flip over, you can see that's very fresh, and you see all this bruising underneath. And that doesn't happen after death. That happens usually while the animal's still alive. Like, everything has different feeding characteristics, but like canids just run down and grabbing. I mean, the whole point and the goal is just to get you to stop moving so that they can start eating you, whether you're dead or not. Is just kind of a bonus. Yeah, grabbing the legs is characteristic of a canid usually. Fawns, the front of their nose is so soft that they can actually grab it and crush it, and then they'll just suffocate. And the bone marrow is a good evaluation of the health of the animal. And so this is actually pretty firm and hard, and it's a little pink. Ideal is just firm, hard, white, waxy, but it is pretty cold and it's been sitting for a while, and so you got to take that into account. So like a really sick or diseased animal, like this bone marrow will actually be gelatinous and sort of like snot. It's really gross and stringy and just kind of oozes out, and that's a really good indicator that the animal's unhealthy before it died. We did our helicopter capture in late February last year, and so this collar's been on for just about a year. Usually in ungulates, it's best to pull the front two incisors to try to get an actual age. And hopefully we can kind of put together what the actual age of some of these mortalities are. You know, maybe it's cool information. Maybe they're all like 2 years old. Maybe they're the ones that are dying are 10, you know. Try to just do our best to evaluate the whole population.
Closed captioning is brought to you by Gamekeeper's Fieldwear. Discover our premium apparel at select sporting goods retailers or online at gamekeepersfieldwear.com. Subscribe to our Gamekeepers magazine or grab a copy at Bass Pro Shops, Tractor Supply, and Walmart. Hey, to find your favorite place, be sure to talk to the land experts at Mossy Oak Properties. They are the most trusted and proven network for buying or selling rural land in the country, truly serving as America's land specialist.
It's awesome. We're not tagging those.
Can you go through how you figure out that this pronghorn is having a baby?
So the collar is around the doe's neck, and we have programmed it to take a GPS location every some number of hours. And we make those decisions based on other objectives and battery longevity, you know, because the more points you take and the more transmissions to the satellite you have, the quicker that collar dies.
Fawn at her feet. She just got it up. It's laying with her, or standing with her right now. 255 yards from where we're at. It's about to nurse. She kept looking that direction and then just slow walked over and got it right up. It's very young. It's a little one. There's got to be a twin.
What we do as we get towards spring, we can remotely command those collars to take more locations. But as we start moving into May, the students start sending commands to all the does, maybe not the bucks, but to all the does. Please take a location every hour. Please send me those locations every 8 hours. So our crews are out there as we get into mid-May. They're getting a dump of points from all 80 females about every 8 hours. You got this pronghorn that moves all over, and then all of a sudden it's dropping a lot of points in one spot. It's forming a little cluster. So she had a really tight cluster last night for what's that?
7.
For 7 hours. The GPS collar says that she was in basically the same place within very close proximity for about 7 hours, which is a little weird unless she was giving birth. We actually run it through some programs that do a cluster analysis and will kind of flag the most likely females that we need to look at the next day. She's walking with a lot of purpose, isn't she? Between looking at her body condition, the cluster of GPS points that we talked about, and then her behavior. Some females seem to get a little restless before they go nurse. And so you'll be watching them and they're acting chill, and then all of a sudden they're just kind of trotting around in the field. Maybe they're trying to make sure there's not a predator cued in on where they're at. But sure enough, here in a minute, she walks over, up pops the fawn, and then they nurse. Pronghorn are more mobile than anything else I've worked with. I've never had to worry about using nets on catching whitetail fawns or elk calves. It does not take very long for a pronghorn fawn to want to jump up and run. We catch almost everything at less than 5 days old, because after that, if you don't get the jump on it, they'll probably beat you. I mean, they're pretty impressive. The collars that we've talked about, whether it's on an adult or a neonate, it's giving us survival information, but it does it kind of in different ways. For adults, their survival tends to be a lot higher, so we're not worried day to day about being out in the field listening to that collar. But these neonate fawns, they actually die pretty quickly. And so one of the things that we're trying to study is how quickly do they die and what's killing them. The baby's collar is only a radio signal. So the only way we know if it's alive or dead is by how it beeps, meaning somebody's got to be in the field with an antenna listening for it, and it's either beeping at the normal pulse rate or it's double time, which means it's in mortality. First we get its eyes covered, which usually calms it down, and then we put the collar on. We do a couple of quick exams of the umbilicus condition. So the umbilicus is where the umbilical cord attached. We look at that to see how that's healing. It kind of also indicates maybe how old the fawn is. We look at hoof characteristics similarly to kind of help gauge the age, and we can compare that back to the cluster that we got from the GPS data on the mother to basically ultimately assign kind of a birth day, and in some cases probably even within a few hours of the actual birth. Separately, we take a little punch of tissue out of the ear to get genetic information on the fawn. We take a hair sample. Once it's done, less than 5 minutes, we get out of there, and then mom comes back and takes care of things thereafter.
But this new technology is actually communicating with mom's collar. If we ever get a situation where she hasn't been back to that fawn, the mother's collar will send us a message through the satellite directly to the computer at the field house and say, hey, we've got an absence. Mom and baby have not been in close enough proximity to talk to each other. Something's wrong. 99 times out of 100, that absent message, that is a mortality message.
We're focused really heavily on these young fawns in the first 45 days of life in particular, but certainly all the way through the end of the summer. After that, their survival kind of bumps up and they tend to survive more like an adult. So those collars will keep beeping usually for about a year, but we will not be checking them daily at that point, because by then the fawn has grown up to the point that it could outrun a coyote if it was attacked, for example.
Dr. Coulter Chitwood from Oklahoma State University. He's got a lot of research going on. We've enjoyed having you and sure appreciate you being on.
Absolutely. Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, guys, we always we talk about what did we learn.
Yeah, super unique animal. I mean, we talk about diversity all the time, the way our natural resources can create something like that. It's pretty cool.
Look, these guys like Coulter are just so fascinating to learn what they're doing.
Yeah, the research, no doubt about it. And like you hit on this a little bit, the work they're doing across state lines with the agencies, with private landowners, all in the name of the resources. Pretty cool.
Yeah, that's impressive.
That's an important resource.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, guys. Well, why don't you say goodbye, Dudley?
Goodbye, Dudley.
Get us out of here, Richie.